Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today, and I want to begin by offering my congratulations to Helio and to the Mises Institute Brazil for their great success in all of their activities and operations, and especially in putting this conference together. I am in strong agreement with the previous speaker that to be a good Austrian economist, one must be a generalist and not a specialist. However, I am delighted that I do not have to explain the entire history of the Austrian school in one lecture, but rather I can focus on a specific topic, namely the economics of the entrepreneur and the place of entrepreneurship in economic science. As many of you know, entrepreneurship is becoming increasingly popular as a subject of discussion in academia, in politics, in economic development, and in many other walks of life. I call it the entrepreneurship phenomenon, meaning the increase in attention that is devoted to entrepreneurship in many parts of society. You have at the universities an increasing number of entrepreneurship courses in business schools, also in other parts of the university. You have entrepreneurship journals in academic research, publications that specialize in mainstream research in entrepreneurship. You have many university research centers, and here are just a few that I've chosen at random, one at Stanford, one at the University of Illinois, and one at MIT, some of which have very substantial amounts of resources devoted to teaching entrepreneurship, research in entrepreneurship, doing outreach and policy work in entrepreneurship as well. There are some private foundations. The Kauffman Foundation is the largest one that specializes in supporting entrepreneurship research and entrepreneurship activities. Even within among policymakers and development experts, World Bank, IMF, and so on, they all talk about entrepreneurship as an important means for economic development. You know, this is Muhammad Yunus, the Nobel Peace Laureate in 2008 or 2009, a specialist in microenterprise and microfinance, also an economist, of course, and many people saw the Nobel Peace Prize to Mr. Yunus as a recognition by the sort of international policy elites that entrepreneurship is a key to social change and maybe even the path to peace. The word entrepreneur and words like entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial, they're used in many, many different ways in different contexts. And it isn't always very clear what does it mean? What does it mean to be an entrepreneur? What does it mean to act in an entrepreneurial way? People have many different things in mind when they use these words. For example, sometimes they think of people who start important companies, right? So there's Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft along with Paul Allen. So often the word entrepreneur is used to describe people like this, people who start small companies that grow and become very large. Sometimes entrepreneur is used to refer to innovators. This is Mr. Edison, Thomas Edison, of course. Maybe you think of an older generation of industrialists like John D. Rockefeller. These are innovators who create new industries, who create new products and services, make them available to consumers. Sometimes the word entrepreneurship is used to describe specific companies. So we might say that Google or Apple, or to take a somewhat older industrial example, 3M, that these are entrepreneurial companies, whereas Petrobras is not an entrepreneurial company. Right? So we often use the word entrepreneurial as an adjective, and we use it to describe particular kinds of organizations that are more dynamic, more innovative, more exciting, more creative, and so on. We might even use the word entrepreneurial to describe a whole culture or an entire society. We might say Brazil is a very vibrant and dynamic and entrepreneurial society with a lot of economic change, high economic growth, whereas where's Professor Hulsman? France, for example, that's not a very entrepreneurial society. It's a bureaucratic society, we might say. One of the most important mainstream entrepreneurship scholars, David Aldrich, has a new book out called The Entrepreneurial Society. Some scholars associated with the Kauffman Foundation produced a book 2 years ago called Good Capitalism, Bad Capitalism. Not an Austrian book, but they make some interesting points about contrasting two kinds of economic systems, what they call entrepreneurial capitalism and what they call bureaucratic capitalism, as two different means of organizing a sort of a more or less private enterprise system. But what does it mean? What does it mean for an economy or a company or a person, an individual, to be entrepreneurial as opposed to something else, something that is not entrepreneurial? Well, I have found in reading the mainstream literature on entrepreneurship, it helps to have some definitions or some ideas in mind, because in the literature, words like entrepreneur, entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial are used in many, many different ways, and they often mean very, very different things. Now, one way of sort of classifying the literature that I have found helpful is to think of it in the following way. What I call sort of the mainstream perspective, the idea of entrepreneurship as an outcome or a phenomenon, meaning that entrepreneurship is something that you can see with your eyes, you can measure with numbers, and you can analyze using standard economic tools. For example, entrepreneurship might be defined as self-employment or startup companies, or maybe the art of managing a small company, or maybe the act of introducing new products. So if entrepreneurship is just about startup companies, well, we can count the number of startup companies in a society or in a community. We can count or measure the percent of the population that is, for example, self-employed. We can write books on how to do it. Small business, starting a business for dummies. Okay, if that's what entrepreneurship is, we can grasp it, we can see it with our eyes, we can study it using mainstream economic tools, categories, concepts, and so on. Sorry, there's to my friend in the back, there's a mistake with the slide here, with the picture in the wrong place. If you read the Austrian literature on entrepreneurship, you find the entrepreneur and entrepreneurship described not as a phenomenon or outcome, but as a fundamental aspect of economic behavior, a fundamental aspect of economic behavior, a way of thinking, a way of acting, a way of reasoning with the things that are around us. For example, in Mises, the broad sense of entrepreneurship, the broad definition of entrepreneurship, is that of acting under uncertainty. So human action under conditions of uncertainty provides the broad definition of entrepreneurship in Mises, according to Mises. We might also think of a narrower definition, a sort of business entrepreneurship or market entrepreneurship, or to use the word catalactic entrepreneurship. But I agree it's not the best word, but this is the word that Mises used, which we might define as the deployment of resources, of heterogeneous capital resources, in pursuit of monetary gains, money profit, and in an attempt to avoid monetary loss. Now, Is entrepreneurship something new in economics? Certainly not. Indeed, what is generally considered the oldest, the first systematic treatise on economic science, the essay by Richard Cantillon, or Cantillon, the essay on the nature of commerce in general, written probably in the 1730s, first published in 1755, the first systematic treatise, book-length treatise on economics, is fundamentally about the entrepreneur. Cantillon gives the entrepreneur a central place in his economic system. Many of the important economists from the classical and early neoclassical period, scholars such as Jean-Baptiste Say, and of course Karl Menger, the founder of the Austrian school, all gave the entrepreneur a very important role in their theories. Some of the most important 20th century economists, such as Joseph Schumpeter, Austrian by birth, though not strictly speaking a part of the Austrian school, the American economist Frank Knight, and more recently writers such as Israel Kirzner and the Nobel laureate Theodore Schultz, have all written about the entrepreneur, have all produced important writings on the nature and implications and sort of meaning of the entrepreneur and entrepreneurship. However, in modern mainstream neoclassical economics, so around the post-World War II period, the era of Samuelson, the Samuelson textbook, the sort of neo-Keynesian synthesis with formal mathematical equilibrium microeconomics combined with some form of Keynesian macroeconomics. Within this tradition, the entrepreneur dropped out. The entrepreneur gradually disappeared from mainstream treatments of organizations and markets. Indeed, those of you, the students and others who have taken courses at the university in economics, unless you were very lucky, you may have taken an entire program in economics without ever hearing the word entrepreneur. In the most popular textbooks, undergraduate and even many graduate textbooks in economics, the word entrepreneur does not even appear in the index. It's not considered a part of economic analysis. There is no role for the entrepreneur. Why?